Thanks a lot. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. And this has been an amazing bunch of series of demo days which we have been conducting. So, those of you who have been joining for the first time for the FinTech OIS session, just to give you a bit of a background in terms of why we are doing this, what we are doing this. So, we are bringing together a bunch of interesting stakeholders across startups, banking side, incumbents, a couple of technology players, consultants, research institutions, and even academics as well, slowly and steadily, and trying to build a whole sort of a closed net community within the whole financial service and fintech domain. The idea out here is just to make sure that more sort of an open innovation conversations happen, and with the same similar theme what we had with Fintegrate of like converge, collaborate, and connect is what we want to continue with that. With that being said, we have been supported by founder teams like Open and Signsy. Open being India, Asia's largest neo-banking platform, Signsy being India's largest no-code RegTech platform, and that's where we have been doing a bunch of initiatives. This is the fourth in the line of the couple of initiatives which we have been doing, and the second series of the demo day. So with that being said, I won't take much of the time, and I'll hand the mic back to Nitesh, who will start welcoming the founders and take it ahead from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sumit, for taking in. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much joining for today's demo day. So we can start with the session. The first pitching slot is Vishnu from Unify. Vishnu, you there?
Hey, Sumit, can you hear me?
Yeah, Vishnu, we can hear. So we can start the session. Over to you, Vishnu.
Okay. So let me just share my slides. Okay. Okay. So, hey, thanks everyone. It's a pleasure to interact with all of you. I know it's a 10-minute slot, so I'll keep it to maybe 2 to 3 minutes of the problem statement and team, and then the rest about what we do. So we're a company that we're a deep tech data company that focuses on enterprise and hyperscale startups. Our primary objective is to deliver data powers for the age of digital first competition. The sorts of powers that are typically only restricted to FANG companies, etc., because they can gobble up the top upstream data engineering and data platform talent. We want to democratize that through the use of autonomous tools. So our team are primarily from enterprise sales strategy, as well as from building enterprise scale analytics platforms for the likes of Walmart, Pepsi, Mondelez, Alliance, etc. So we have a first-hand view of enterprise sales. We understand the need for on-premise or private cloud solutions. Our advisors have worked in the, have scaled and sold large data platforms in the past. We also work with top academics globally because we're a highly performant analytics engine as well. So I'll come to that, but this is a little bit about us. So I'll quickly jump into what problems we're seeing, which led to the birth of Unify, right? So you have this acceleration of digital transformation, which means more and more data sources, companies that are completely redefining how they work to have digital first, digital centric data models. And then finally, the SaaSification of everything, right? So for every narrow niche activity, you now have a separate SaaS player that your company probably uses, which means that you need to integrate across this vast number of internal and external sources, which are constantly changing. You might move vendors, and this confluence and blending in of traditional as well as big data sources. The other is, of course, a big tectonic shift. Everyone now has an agenda to move to the cloud in a fairly timely manner, which means new platforms, new integration tools, new consumption paradigms as well. And this is quite disorienting given what you're seeing in the sources side. All this is leading to an acute skill gap where the cost of people and the ability to even attract and retain these people is far higher and far more challenging for companies than the actual tooling cost, which was quite the opposite in earlier times. This is especially true for upstream roles in data integration, where you combine software engineering as well as analytics talent, which is two very different skill sets, right? So it's multidisciplinary talent, and all the way downstream in terms of how do I make my database performant and responsive, in a way that I can serve my users and serve my use cases in a timely manner. but also make my compute costs manageable, right? So that means you need senior database engineers, performance tuning engineers, and these are very hard to find in the market. So the last one that you've all seen is that this demand for self-serve data democratization. In the past, if you had a small core team of people serving your analytical needs, writing optimized queries, now it can be anybody that has a Tableau, a Power BI, or a Looker, right? And how these tools hit your backends with queries means that the element of optimization is gone. So I have some examples of companies who have been hit with massive cloud bills as they move to a self-service, a democratized model. However, this is now an irreversible change, right? Once you give rank and file access to data and insights, it's like oxygen. You cannot take it back. So just at the culmination of all of these trends, these upstream data integration roles are seeing a 20% vacancy rate, as opposed to even like as low as 5% for even some very hot roles like data scientists. And some examples that I have of large banks who have migrated on, have been early adopters of cloud platforms like Snowflake, etc. And I've seen their spend on Snowflake alone go from, let's say, $4 million 2 years ago to $30 million as of last year. So this is an inevitable kind of byproduct of the pay-as-you-go model, right? Where you're not constrained by physical servers in a large room, but you can scale infinitely. But then how do you control costs? So those are the two problems that we address through Unify. So we believe that any autonomous or new age solution should not hit only one of the problems, which is either personnel cost, tooling cost, or platform cost. It has to be a cross cutting solution that addresses that plays a role in all of these. And as a company that wants to partner with our clients across the life cycle, that is both during building as well as during operating and maintaining such platforms, our offerings are really tailored in that way. So we have two pieces of core IP. This is coming to what we do, right? We have this ability to autonomously integrate data across enterprise silos without the need for specialized resources. And the end result is that it's 10x faster to build complex or basic analytics use cases, and you end up with greater than about 2x of a cost saving. So rather than needing 4 to 5 different tools and licenses, it gets down to one single tool, Unify. And you need 3x fewer specialized data engineers, ETL architects, and upstream resources. What we also do is auto-translate all of your upstream production or transactional systems into an analytics form without the need for separate modeling and harmonization or connecting across sources. So that's the first piece of, that's the first aspect that we productize, which is relevant during the building and operating of such platforms. The second is when you're actually running these platforms, we've seen how query bills can go off the charts and can be like astronomically high. So that's where we've built our own proprietary indexing and query processing algorithms, both of which are now patented, which basically allow you to allow your business users and citizen data analysts and data scientists to query without worries, wherein there's over a 55 to 60% reduction in cost and a massive reduction in compute time, even with respect to cutting edge data platforms. So this is at a high level what we do. So you go from this, which is this heavily disconnected, painstakingly integrated world, to an autonomously integrated as well as highly performant, cost-controlled analytics landscape. Yeah, so Zez, I'd love to understand what questions you might have.
Hi everyone, if you have any question, please unmute yourself and ask the question, or just put on a chat box.
So from a fintech perspective, what we've seen, which is very similar to the perspective from banking, financial services, and insurance, is that there's always a struggle to get a single accurate view of your customer across business units, across channels, across org functions, across geographies. So this is something that is a one-click operation through Unify without human intervention being involved. Secondly, there are a lot of RegTech use cases where you need to build a new, like let's say, risk model for regulators based on what you're seeing in North America, right? And often you need to build separate data lakes and data warehouses to cater to those. So Unify's core value there is that you get to the actual regulatory reporting part in 10x less time, right? So a 14, 18-month project is crunched down to like 3 to 8 weeks.
That's great, Vishnu. Guys, if you have any question, let us know. Let's wait for 30 seconds, Vishnu. If there any question.
Hi Vishnu, this is Oishik from Data Sutra. So I just wanted to understand what is the infrastructure like right now? Like, are you guys working on this on cloud or on premise? So what is the infrastructure look like?
Yeah, Ashnik, a very relevant question. So the infrastructure is whatever our clients are on today, right? So if you're on-prem, this is deployed on-prem. If this is on an AWS or Azure or a Google Cloud, it's deployed within a customer's cloud account. So no data ever leaves customer data boundaries.
Okay, so you work around whatever infrastructure the client already has.
Absolutely. Because those are very high level CIO, multi-year decisions, right? And a single software vendor cannot you cannot influence those. So we fit where, depending on the state of your chosen vendor platform deployment.
But it's not an issue on your end working with something like an S3 and then again moving to a Azure. That's not a challenge that.
Absolutely not. We don't have any modules that are tied to any one cloud provider or on-prem provider. So we're fully containerized. So we've made sure that that's something that we enable from day one, because clients are terrified of vendor lock-in, right? So
Right.
none of this is built with modules that are tied to any of the major cloud vendors.
Sure. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ashik. Any question from audience?
Hi Vishnu.
Yeah, Jaman. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I'm from JSW Ventures. Just keen to understand whether you had from a traction perspective. I'm sorry, I joined late, so I might have missed that.
Okay. So from a traction perspective, we actually are working with a couple of fintech unicorns in India, a leading bank in Southeast Asia, and are also about to undertake enterprise POCs with large global clients, some of whom include like JP Morgan, Chase, etc. So we're focused on that segment of the market.
Got it. Got it. All right. Thanks so much.
So one quick question over here. Are you guys using graph database and graph analytics for this?
Actually, very good question. So we internally use a graph-like store. We don't specifically use a graph DB like Neo4j. That skill set is quite specialized, right? So what we do is we detect relationships and store it internally as a graph. But to users, we expose it as a set of tables, just like they're used to interacting with either in SQL or Python or Spark or whatever else.
Understood. Okay.
Thanks, Vikram. Any other questions from audience? So please unmute yourself and ask.
Hi Vishnu, this is Harsha from Inflexor. I missed a part of your presentation. What is your current traction in terms of POCs, etc. going on?
So we have a couple of paying customers as well as about 4 enterprise POCs underway. These are with large banks, retailers, etc. In terms of converted customers, these would be a couple of fintech unicorns in India.
Okay. And what was your revenues for FY21?
So we actually started sales in Jan this year. So we incorporated late September of last year in the US.
Right.
So, we've still not closed our first financial year. So we hope to close this financial year at approximately $750,000 in ARR.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Asha. Any last question we can take ahead, or let's move towards our second pitching slot? I guess everyone has their own, everyone got their question and answer right.
Thank you so much for
Thank you,
your time.
Vishnu. Thank you so much, Vishnu, for joining us today. So let's move to our second slot today. So we have from Data Sutram, Rajit Bhattacharya. Rajit, are you here?
Yes, Nilesh. Just give me a minute. My internet is just a bit unstable. Just give me a minute.
Sure, no worries.
Great, great. So, hi everyone. I'm Rajit. I'm the founder and chief executive officer at Data Sutram, and we help companies leverage the location DNA. This company was started by me, Ankit, and Oishik around 3 years back during our final year of engineering at Jadavpur, when we realized that businesses are missing out on an important piece in their growth struggle: location data. And today, holding on to that, we have built a company of 25 plus people. We are catering to some of the top enterprises, are funded by the 100x VC and the Indian Angel Network, and mentored by some of the stalwarts from the industry. The problem that we are trying to solve today is we are helping people understand that can you find the oil without scratching the surface of the earth? Today, be it a bank who is trying to understand where to open an ATM or a branch, or a lending company who is trying to understand whom to give out loans to, what's very important is what is it out there in that location? What's the business propensity in that location? And that's where we come in. We help businesses with the DNA of every location so that decisions become easier for them. When we look at most of the companies in payments, in lending today out there to acquire merchants onto their platform, they're spending trillions of dollars on Salesforce, on marketing, trying to understand which is the right merchant, which is the right location. Today, what we do is, again, based on what we call the DNA of every location. We help you understand that where is the right place for you to do business. What we do is we have satellites, mobile phones, POS devices, IoT sensors, several such machines around us which capture information about us on Earth. As a company, Data Sutram has tied up with over 650 plus million devices, 16 plus satellites, 20 plus POS companies, and overall, we have over 250 plus dynamic data sources that provide us intelligence about every location on a day-to-day basis. And combining all of this data together, our platform, which is an AI-based platform that cleans, processes, and blends all of this data together, creates, again, what we call the DNA of the location. And based on that, what we understand and what we help businesses understand is how do consumers behave in a location in terms of footfall, in terms of population, in terms of income, in terms of affluence. And on the other hand, we help companies understand what is it present there in terms of brands, kirana, stores, societies, and whatnot. Combining these two data sets, we create the potential, which is helping businesses understand the propensity of that location. Now, how we've worked in the previous past, we worked in retail where we helped a lot of retail chains open stores regularly, and then we went into financial services, where today we are helping gold loan companies, we're helping banks understand where should they be opening the right branches in the ATMs. And with our data, the maturity time for a branch or even a store has been cut down by almost 50% on the basis of accuracy of our data. And today, businesses are not making an opportunity loss anymore. They're understanding exactly where should they be present. What we create is a location scorecard. We create location scorecard for the merchants out there, for the SMEs out there, for the hospitals, for the farmers, on the basis of which businesses understand that whether they should be acquiring them, whether they should be giving out loans there, what kind of discounts, offers, payments should be providing. Today, we have worked with some of the largest players in the company who are depending on our data. M-Swipe, Spice Money, Ugro, India Infoline, all of these financial companies use our data on a day-to-day basis to understand their strategy. We've moved on to receive investment from one of the India's largest financial services players as of right now, and who is investing into us with the data, with the money to help us really accelerate the product. Now, let me come to the process of it. The first level, what we do is we do a location profiling. Based on the affluence, based on the commercial index, based on several such location attributes, we first understand that what is the success factors for your business? What are those attributes or variables that are important for you? At the next level, at a pin code level, our dashboard pinpoints and understands parameters like population, footfall, income, lifestyle, digitalization, number of apps present, ATM density, shopping density, and over and all tries to estimate your potential. And then for every pin code, we break it down into 100-meter tiles, where at 100-meter granularity, we not only pinpoint the merchants out there, we identify who are the potential merchants. For existing merchants, we give out scorecards, which tell us what's the business they would be generating for the month. And as a result, businesses understand in terms of credit underwriting, in terms of income, in terms of loan collection, all of these activities are regularly dependent on our scorecard. For every merchant, we monitor the mobile devices moving around. And based on the mobile device movement and the profiling, we understand where income, what income class people come from, what's the average spend there, what's the economic activity happening, what do people buy and shop there. As a result of which, again, this is leveraged by most of the companies to give strategies at a merchant level in terms of loans, in terms of credit worthiness. Today, this is one example of how two merchants can be compared.
Rajit, Rajit, I have one. You are changing the slides?
Yes. You can't.
We can't see the slides.
Okay. Sorry. Can you see the change?
It says started sharing the screen. Can't see.
In 1 second. Could you see the screen now?
No, it still said you started sharing screen. It's blank.
Was this a problem from start, or did it happen right away?
No, it just started. It's once the screen was visible and you also, but later on it's called stuck and freeze up.
Is it coming up now?
It said you had started sharing screen, but it's still blank.
Yeah, Rajat, you want me to share the slides?
Yeah, so but is it still happening? Is the problem still happening?
Yeah, it's blank. It's black screen only.
Yeah, I think my co-founder is on the call. Let Oishik.
No worries. Ashik, please share.
Yeah, is my screen?
Yes, we can see the screen. Over to you, Rajat.
Thank you. Till which point did you follow? Till point was it visible? Could you help?
Last slide I could see.
Hello, Rajat. You there?
Yeah, I'll continue. I'll just give me a minute.
Yeah.
I'm just setting it up. Meanwhile, any questions I can feel free to take in.
Yes, there's a question on the chat box from Niharika. How do you make sure you are still protecting the privacy of people while providing the data? Now
Right.
people want non-invasive apps.
So Niharika, for all our data collection processes, we work in the markets where there are GDPR compliant. So we don't collect any kind of name or phone number or any kind of personally identifiable information. All data is anonymized and hashed. As a result of which, it's completely we comply with all the laws. So as a result, that it's not a problem for us.
Thank you.
Yes. So till which point was Ushik, if you could go to the slide which was last visible, I'll take it from there.
Yes, this is the last slide. We can see.
Okay. So just using these data sources, what we broadly do is for every location, we help companies understand how consumers behave there in terms of the footfall, the population, the income class, the affluence. And on the other hand, what kind of shops are present there in terms of kirana, stores, brands, grocers, and whatnot. Now, moving on, combining this data, how we have helped companies is to go and rapidly open branches and ATMs. India Infoline used us for a rapid branch expansion across rural, semi-urban India. In the past, we have worked in retail where we have done extensive store opening. Moving on, with that knowledge, we moved on to the banking sector, opening ATMs. And today, the maturity time for any place is cut down by almost 50%. So people are opening in the right places on basis of our accuracy. Now we are presenting location scorecards for merchants, for SMEs, for farmers, on basis of which companies are giving out loans, acquiring, planning to understand where to go about. Moving on, I was just quickly taking you through the use cases. So at the first level, we do a location profiling, understanding what factors are important, and then going on to help you determine that which are the variables in terms of affluence, commercial nature, which are playing a role with respect to your business KPIs. Now, at the end of it, what we do is at a pin code level, we help you analyze various data points, so, like affluence, lifestyle, digitalization, density of banks, shopping density, and help you understand consumer behavior in a location. Now, once you know at a pin code level what is the situation, the eventual part is the on-ground action point. So your sales team or your team on ground, especially the banks and the fintechs who have people on ground to move around, they get our APIs to which provide them intelligence on which merchants to onboard, which merchants are underperforming with respect to the footfall out there, who are more likely to default for the month. And these information points are something that they regularly consume on a month-on-month basis to understand how to take this forward. If you move on to the next slide, what I was mentioning is for every merchant, we look at the mobile devices moving around in the vicinity of the merchant and helping them understand that what are the trends in terms of loans, in terms of creditworthiness, offers, and helping these payment companies give out discounts and offers to those locations, and helping in terms of what kind of discounts and offers should they be giving to encourage more and more. If I move on to the next slide, this is an example of where we have two merchants and we can track that in terms of what is the common footfall happening. So this is an example of how at a merchant level, we can have information in terms of who are the visitors from high income groups, from lifestyle and all that. At the next point, I'll stop at this point. Broadly, the idea is with our data today, several financial players are making a day-to-day decision on basis of our data, and we are seeing the recognition in terms of the awards, in terms of the revenue. And the objective with which I am here today is to present to you what we called a location scorecard, which we are aiming to become an alternative in terms of especially merchants, SMEs. It is emerging as the next Sybil, and that's where I want to kind of stop. And happy to take in more questions. And once again, apologies for the slight confusion in terms of slides not getting visible and all. Yes.
Rajit, there are a few questions on the chat box. can see.
Yes. So happy to do a report or a pin code or anything. We have our platform and APIs live. I'll share the link. You can go onto our website and get an idea of the demo and all. We'll provide you the link. If there is time, of course, I can take you to the platform. That's up to the organizers. And the next question in terms of collecting data from mobile and POS, that's entirely done through partnerships. So we have partnerships with over a lot of location SDK companies through which we get information in terms of, so on a day-to-day basis, we have over 157 million devices pinging our servers 10 to 15 times a day, almost 80 to 100 GB of data on a day-to-day basis entering our servers just from mobile data. And we get visits, we get pings, we get the mobile network, the type of phone on basis of which we profile these devices. On the other hand, for POS machines and all, they're usually done through our partnerships with payment providers. Yes, any other question, if I did answer, or any follow-ups there?
Any other question from audience side? You can unmute yourself and ask, or put on the chat box.
Hey, hi, Ranji, Janam here from JSW Ventures.
Hi, Janam.
Hi. Just keen to understand. I think there's someone who's asked this question as well, but just to highlight that question and add to it is, can you help me understand data sources in a more granular manner? Is this all secondary? Is there any proprietary data that you're putting into the engine? And from what I understand, is this is a geolocation based information that you provide. Can you help me understand the accuracies for tier 2, tier 3 cities?
Sure, Janam. So, we are right now, we started in this field of location intelligence. We called ourselves a location intelligence company. But right now, what we realized is sector-wise need of it. And for us, we've segmented our company into segments for each sector. We have a retail unit, which is catering to retail. In financial services, we are now focusing, especially with the merchant scorecard and the location scorecard for banks and ATMs. In pharma, we have a tie-up in terms with IMS to take the pharma side. So we have such multiple channels of partnership of our data, which is often the milk that is getting supplied to make ice cream, yogurt, different type of products, right? I'm just giving an analogy to help you understand the context. In terms of the data and what we do is there are several sources of data. Today, we are one of the largest data providers in terms of accuracy. So even in rural India, for a pin code in Barmer, which is a very border area in Rajasthan district, we have information of over 500 to 600 chemists in that vicinity. In a small Bandra pin code, we'll have over.
I mean, how are you getting that data? Help me understand that, please.
So we have tie-ups in terms of partnerships. Our partnerships through.
Who do you tie up with?
So
the POS company. I mean, I saw that in your slide.
So POS is one
of
POS is one of the company, one of the types. We also partner with Google. Okay. We work with all the place of interest databases. Our main USP is blending multiple data sources together. So we have over 250 plus data sources, right? Most of that is proprietary, and we have exclusive partnerships signed up with them. So we identify through satellite structure there, and then we marry it with the registry data. We marry it with the POS data to understand that what is the merchant type there. So that's how, combining it. And today we have data on over 19,600 pin codes in India, which is almost the entire country, bearing a few border areas.
Sure. Thanks. I mean, I have a few more questions. Probably we can take it offline.
Yes, and I'm happy to do an extensive call and take you through the product.
Sure. Thanks.
Thanks, Janam. So, Rajat, we have other few more questions on the chat box. We can take one or two now, so we can, or else we can take it offline.
Yeah. So how many pin codes I mentioned? Around 19,600 pin codes we're right now covering. now on the extent of skewness, yes, location, post lockdown, we are seeing skewness, and even transactions don't always capture the on ground activities, as a result of which mobile pings is an alternative footfall parameter that we are using. So there is, I mean, I don't know how to comment on the skewness, but of course there is a wide variety that we're observing and what our customers are seeing in terms of loan collection and all. I'll drop in my email and website link. Happy to get in touch for more questions.
Sure, sure, we'll do that, Rajat. Thank you so much, Rajat, for the thing. So we can move our third pitching slot for today. The company's data team. So he's presenting Puskaraj.
I hope this is visible.
Yes, Anga, this is visible.
Fantastic. Thanks. Yeah, thanks again for giving us the opportunity. We are called the data team, and we have launched our product called as Cadence.ai. And in today's discussion, I wanted to mainly call out the role that Cadence can play in arresting the problem of non-performing assets, and the AI that's embedded within plays a very critical role. So there is a need for bringing together this level of technology to this particular problem statement, because over the last, like I would say 18, 24 months, this problem has just become even more significant. In fact, it's one of the highest in the emerging economies. And we all know that in various forms because of the increasing number of newspaper reports where we see all these financial companies listing out assets for sale. Like that's just in the retail side. Like for instance, one of the things that was astounding was Manappuram Gold Finance for Q4 FY21. I think they did 4 times the volume of what they would do normally, or some such ridiculous number, just based on the amount of gold which was being pledged by retail sector and how much of it had to be sold off in order to recover. But those are things you can do in the retail, especially when it's asset backed. But on the corporate side, there is a tremendous amount of insolvencies that have been filed, especially ever since the bank was launched as a separate entity, right? So close to 150 such reports have been filed already. Now, in most cases, the lenders take a haircut of 95%, 95%, which in hindsight looks like a ridiculous number, right? But then what we would like to say, right, and that's something we strongly believe in, is that NPAs, like Rome, the city, didn't happen in a day, right? There have been so many layers of information, and some of which hidden behind asymmetry, that was available or could have been made available, could have been analyzed, which could result in a much better targeting, much better intelligence that's required, right, for the banks to be able to tackle this problem. And then once having identified, then the action taking can appropriately happen based on whether you're a public sector bank and private sector bank and things like that. So we are in this problem space mainly because our broader company has been focused on behavior intelligence as the mantra. So maybe let's just take a step back and say, what can an AI-powered EWS really look like? EWS stands for early warning system, where you're getting an early warning for assets which are potentially going to go bad. So the first is that the post-pandemic revival is going to be led by the MSME, and that's something all the economists are talking about. But predominantly, a lot of this is going to be focused on priority sector lending, which is where the information asymmetry is the highest. The second part of it is that the normal credit appraisals, while they are great when there is existing and past credit history, what invariably they don't take into account is the behavior, right? The behavior of not just individuals, but also the corporate entities themselves. And the third aspect is the data, right? I think this is something that cannot be stressed enough, right? The data that's heart and soul of every single decision that an AI-powered system can take is not actually ready for human consumption. And this data is available in various forms, and sometimes it's very hard to get to, sometimes it's easier, right? Like there are APIs available, things like that, or data brokers available. So this external intelligence has not ever been put together in a way that's consumable. Then third-party lenders are typically weak in documentation. We see this all the time. Like for instance, a banking financial institution which acquires a portfolio, and that's very common nowadays, right? If they acquire a portfolio, the amount of documentation that comes in is in its classical legacy form. It's non-digital. And then there is an associated level of disparity, right, between how much the bank which is acquiring has been tracking about different entities versus how much the acquired portfolio itself has been tracking. So that's a big problem when it comes to wholesale lending. And finally, by the time things are recognized as red flag, it's already too late, right? So by the time, so to speak, Rome is already burning. So what can we do ahead of time in order to mitigate the impact of a loan going bad? That's the problem with which we started attacking this specific use case. So before we go into deeper on how we solve for this, let's just take a step back and just present about the company. So we call the data team. Like I said, we are an AI solutions company. We've been helping businesses across verticals, including financial services, for the last 6 years. Headquartered here in India, but with active presence in Southeast Asia. Pushkar and myself are the co-founders. Cadence.ai is our flagship product. It's meant as an automated behavior intelligence product. It's deployed as a SaaS kind of a model, but in a way that's private tenant. Private tenant meaning each bank gets its own software, and they don't need to worry about sharing data outside and things like that. And we are able to look at that first-party data, which is the data that the banks typically collect themselves, and bring in our value addition, which is in terms of data and AI pipelines, and extract that level of intelligence that's required. So as it turns out, behavior intelligence is extremely applicable across different kinds of problem statements, early warning systems just being one of them. You could also use it for credit intelligence. You could also use it for compliance reporting, as well as retail marketing and things like that, right? So we've done a fair share of use cases across the board. But today's conversation, I'm going to restrict it to the AWS side of it. So if you look at the cone of impact for a loan, obviously the earlier you can catch the information asymmetry, the better it is. As you go through the process of origination and then the closure, dispersal, and then the post-dispersal activities, you've already started to incur a significant amount of cost, and therefore associated opportunity costs also increase. So what can an AI-based system do? It can mitigate risk at every single point in the step. So that's our bigger pitch to banks, and there are a few banks I can mention as well towards the last part of this pitch who are actively using it in this manner. Obviously, at mitigation point number one, that's where the information asymmetry is the highest. So here, good data collection practices play a critical role. And here, our value addition is we've got the data brokerages worked out in such a way that we not only ingest their raw data, which are trustworthy, but we're able to mine that intelligence and give it to you as a bank in a way that's immediately usable, right? And this is especially so for the corporate and SME sector, right? Basically, the business banking divisions. That's mitigation point number one. The mitigation point number two is at the point of underwriting through the origination side. How can we actually have better credit appraisal systems in place that go beyond classic bureau scores or beyond classic relationship-based selling? So here, there is a tremendous amount of behavior information that's encoded in these data sets, and we've got the AI pipelines done at scale to prove it out. And I'll give you a couple of case study examples as well. So good credit appraisal plays a critical role in mitigating. The third, after dispersal, is that continuous monitoring plays a critical role. And here's where there are early warnings that you can actually pick up based on what's happening currently with that business in terms of business activity, and merging that with external data sets as are being collected. So correlating post-dispersal data is a very, very critical aspect here. So again, that data intelligence is something that we specialize in. So throughout the credit cycle, basically. So in a nutshell, Cadence is extremely, well suited for this problem of credit intelligence. So there are two sources of data for us, two types of sources of data. One that typically comes from internal to the bank, right? Or the NBFC for that matter, which is in terms of, core banking data from their core banking systems, the CASA data with respect to who's holding what kind of account, assets data, liquidity data, exposure data, trade data, right? And in a normal banking context, these are all extremely sensitive data sets and not easy for them to think about giving it out to third-party vendors, which is why we have packaged this entire software in such a way that it's commercial off the shelf so that they can just deploy it within their tenant, right? On the other side, it's the external data sources. And here's where we have stitched the partnerships, like I mentioned, and also built the pipelines for us to extract intelligence. So for instance, GST data, which is proving to be even more important of late. News data, news is usually a lagging indicator, but we've done again the work required to be able to pick up some of these lagging indicators and turning it into early leading indicators of non-performance, right? Legal data, data that's registered with the compliance and regulatory authorities. And so all of these are brought together, unified, and they've been analyzed by our AI pipelines in order to to form a consolidated profile. That's what we call as the Cadence profiles. And this is then available as various forms of dissemination, either through APIs, which directly link with, as an example, relationship manager mobile applications. That's what we've done for one of the banks. Or it's available as a UI for the monitoring team in the credit division or the wholesale banking division to come and take a look and drill down deeper and do some analysis and create some workflows. Of course, we provide KPIs, insights, dashboards, reports. Those are standard practice. But in many cases, we also directly instrument the digital, right? So as an example, one of the banks, so in fact, I'll just talk about that in a minute, right now. So one of the flagship use cases for this is a private sector bank. They went public with our AI underwriting module for their SME banking. And this reduced the turnaround time to 1 hour. Like earlier, it used to take 3 days. And also, they ended up increasing their loan book size by 4x, right? With the amount of external data, as well as the first-party data-based analysis that we were doing for them. And then the other example is, again, one of the largest private sector banks here in India. They use Cadence to reduce NPA by 15%, and going live within 3 months of deployment. And here, again, the crux was being able to integrate internal and external data sets together. So our value proposition to this problem space is ready triggers for immediate use. And I'll show you a couple of screenshots just after this. Ready data partnerships, especially the external data, like I was saying. The AI pipelines is ready for both the internal and external data, the first party data and the external data. This is deployed or rather deployable on a cloud platform. Doesn't matter what the cloud platform is. And that allows us to scale up to huge volumes of core banking data and things like that. So in some cases, we deal with petabytes on a monthly basis. And finally, we provide this as a managed solution. So this is available as a SaaS kind of a model with end-to-end customer success services as well. So that all that the bank or the NBFC needs to do is just hand off the problem statement to us and we give them triggers on a regular basis. So that's our pitch. So I can show a couple of screenshots if there is time and there's interest as well.
Yeah, Ranga, you can. Any question from the audience side? Please unmute yourself or put on the chat box.
Ranganjan, this is Dipanshu. Is this product only for banks right now? I'm an insurance company. Anything for insurance?
Yeah, so we actually provide behavior intelligence to insurance companies as well. There are like 3 major insurance customers of ours, but there the problem statement is different. But certainly we can talk offline if you're interested. But yes, insurance is also one of the key customers for us.
I'm saying only about Cadence.ai, this platform. This looks more for banks and more from a SME lending point of view, isn't it? The kind of data points that you're collecting.
Yeah, so for different use cases, the how it all comes together varies. For the insurance sector, we've actually built this as a way to do hyper personalization of customer service, so that it becomes a much more loyal and enriching experience for customers of insurance companies. Turns out the commonality is actually behavior intelligence, and that's what our core specialty for Cadence also is. We can talk to you about how we have helped a couple of insurance companies there.
Hey Ranga, there's a question from Aman Jain who says, can you provide an example of what data sets you capture post disbursal of loans for salaried individuals?
Sure, yeah. So on the retail side, the amount of data varies based on how, what kind of a persona the retail individual is. In many cases, we've seen that salaried individuals are actually probably one of the better persona types in terms of available data. So here we're talking about being able to cross-correlate levels of salaries, right? Levels of like titles, as well as the nature of the industry that they're working in, as well as correlate that with the places they live and the kind of sector that they work in, and be able to establish the continued ability to repay, right? Because that's a critical factor to assess whether the loan is going to go bad. The second aspect here is the intent to repay typically doesn't change as much based on like from origination through post disbursal. So we've seen that as one of the behavioral trends. It's more about the ability, and of course, the contactability also has to be constantly triangulated in order for you to assess that you're still able to reach the particular customer. And there, the third-party data sets, like for instance, social data, play a critical role. On the retail side, we've also seen that the extent of privacy controls are different based on the data providers. And that's why the leverage that you can get is vastly differs from, let's say, a salaried individual in an established sector versus somebody who's in the, for instance, the informal sector, informal labor sector.
Thanks, Ranga. There are like few other questions. One question from Niharika. You mentioned behavior science you used to find trigger. Can you share what medium you used to find out about the borrower? And also about for those who have no credit, how do you use your AI, or is this only for people with credit?
Yeah, excellent questions. So I'll answer the second question first, and that probably illustrates the answer for the first question as well. See, for us, the new to credit or existing to credit doesn't really matter. Ultimately, what matters is what behaviors the individuals have exhibited. So for a person who's new to credit, the behaviors typically are with respect to their own lives. Right? So as an example, in the retail world, somebody who graduates from let's say a BCom degree in 3 years' time, and then goes on to get an MBA in 2 years' time, and then they are ready for the labor market, and they go through the but they, for instance, they get placed in a good company in a good title, like for instance, program manager or business analyst or something like that. Then we know that's par for the course, right? In terms of behavior. So BComs are supposed to take 3 years, MBA is supposed to take between 1 to 2 years, and a business analyst is like the natural progression. But then if all this happens and then they get placed in as something else, right, which doesn't really gel with that kind of education profile, then it could be something that gets picked up for due diligence, obviously. The idea being that AI is here only to augment the decision making, not to replace the human decision making. So on the other end of the spectrum, you also have people who might have genuinely gone through issues which prevented them from finishing their BCom in 3 years. It could have taken them 4 years, 5 years even. And so naturally, the AI will pick up these kinds of clues and say that, okay, this is something that requires more careful due diligence, right? Not to say that we will decline the loan request, but more so from a perspective that let's actually go deeper into understanding why is that the case. So that's an example at the time of origination. Now, behaviors could also be in other different forms. Like for instance, behaviors could be in terms of career progressions, in terms of the ability to continuously service a utility, like for instance, a telecom bill. Variety of different types of behaviors like this exist. So all of those put together form like a risk profile of or a risk psychographic for an individual. And like I said, in the retail cases, the leverage that you can get varies based on the person arm. Like in many cases, you don't really have these data sets available at all, and that's also the nature of the game for retailers who come. I mean, retail market that comes from tier 3, tier 4 cities. Now, the other end of the spectrum on the corporate side, like the business banking side, invariably the data exists today, right? And the data is very rich in terms of behavior. It's just that it's available in different forms, and that's something that we specialize in very well. So here, as an example, I'll show you with a couple of screenshots. So here, this is actually the Cadence AWS user interface. This UI is meant for the monitoring teams within banks and NBFCs to take a look at what is currently happening with my customers and how many of these customers have triggers that I need to act upon, or I mean, there's a workflow that I need to go do something about, right? So if you look at this middle of the slide here, I'm just going to use a laser pointer. So you see that this specific kind of trigger is important for this specific UI user. So the user has picked the use case that says large number of transactions with interconnected companies. Now, what is the definition of interconnected company? I mean, as per the Indian accounting standard, IAS 24, there is a specific set of definitions which are there for what amounts to related party transactions. But then, how do you find that, right? It's not something that is actually set in stone. The reason being the data is not available easily. And here's where the information asymmetry comes in. So the corporate entity, it's up to them to declare to you as a bank that these are my related companies. But what if they choose to omit, right, that these related parties are not declared? So the examples are many, right? DHFL being one of them. And like we said, NPA didn't happen in a day, right? So many of these behaviors have been happening over a while. So the idea was to actually get to that behaviors much earlier than what transpired with the likes of DHFL. So how can you get to that related party information using external data and understanding these behaviors of constant siphonage of funds that was happening? And these large number of transactions kept happening in relation to the turnover. This was definitely suspicious. So that's an example of behavior that we're talking about.
Thanks, Ranga. So there's one more question on the chat, but we can take it offline because of time bound. Thank you so much, Ranga. Thank you so much, Pushkaraj, for the pitching here. So
Okay, thank you, guys.
thank you so much. So we are pushing like our fourth pitching slot. That is JJ Tax team. Abha and Komal, are you here?
So today, our product is basically JJ Tax app. So what does JJ Tax app does is we basically resolve real-time resolution. Sorry for this thing. So we basically resolve queries on a real-time basis. Now, how did this idea came into picture, right? So we go back to October 2019 when it was a high tax kind of season for CAs and for other professionals. So that is when the founders realized, that there are many people out there, there are many clients out there who actually need a lot of help with respect to taxes. They don't know what taxes to pay. There are a lot of confusion about due dates, about why so many taxes, or what are the filing compliances, and so many endless taxation requirements that are out there in the market. So that is when the founders realized that we need to have a platform in the market that can actually resolve these queries on an instant basis, and so that the customer or the client does not have to wait for too long and to rush out to their professionals or to their chartered accountants for one-on-one query. So that is where JJ Tax app plays a big role. We are providing instant resolution to all these tax queries completely free of cost. So this has been done basically to understand the customer behavior throughout the market, and also to get as many as possible customers on board. Apart from that, we are also resolving, we are also providing all the tax related services on one platform itself, so that the customer does not go anywhere else. So we have GST, TDS, income tax, RSC compliances, custom based, all type of services in the app itself. Talking about other features of the app, we are also providing, the ultimate motive is to go completely paperless, to avoid all the physical documentation that keeps on happening, and the hassle that the customer has to undertake to maintain all the ITRs, all their invoices and everything. So JJ Tax app basically wants everything to go paperless, and that is why we have actually provided a file cabinet in the app itself, so that the customers can upload all their documentation. He can store them, he can share it with the service provider, anything that he wants to do with those documents. Apart from that, we are also providing instant notifications and due date reminders, so that the customer or our members get to know what all the due dates are, when he has to make the payments, when he has to file his return, so that he does not have to pay any kind of penalties or interest per se. Talking about the market, since we are actually targeting PAN holders, we are targeting queries and not persons. We are actually targeting 50 crore PAN holders throughout India, because we believe that everybody out there has a tax query. So why not just resolve, queries for them all? Our ultimate agenda is to actually reach to 1% of these PAN holders, that is 50 lakh active customer base in the next 4 to 5 years. So that is our agenda for the next 2 to 3 years. And of course, talking about the market is huge. It's increasing every year by 10 crore PAN holders are actually getting added every year. And also to talk about the income tax return filers, we had seen 6 crore returns being filed for financial year 19-20, whereas before that it was around 5 crore that the returns were filed. So we can see around 30 to 40% increase in the IT return filers every year, which also adds up to our market. Talking about the journey, the app is not very old. The app was launched in May 2020 itself. And in this 1 year of our journey, we have actually got more than 8.5 lakh downloads. And we feel that that's actually, quite more than what we expected for a tax app. So that has actually given us a good boost for 1 year. Talking about the competition, yes, there are multiple players out there in the market who are actually into, the field of automation of, who are into the field of automation of Just a second. Are my slides moving or they are still on the same screen? Can anybody help me out with that?
It's on keynote only. Key problem, sorry. Key problem side.
Is it now moving?
Yeah, it is now moving, yes.
Yeah, so just to go ahead quickly, I've already talked about the features. Our targeted, of course, 50 crore PAN holders. I've already talked about it. Yeah, journey, and then competition. Yes, so competition, there are multiple players out there in the market who are actually into the same regime. They're into the automation of taxation services, but what sets JJ Tax apart is basically the USP of our app, which is real-time query resolution. Now, how is this different? You know, we are basically providing professional service, professional help to all these customers. So it works like there are actual chartered accountants who are sitting behind the system, and they're actually actively dealing with these queries as and when they come in. We are also introducing the offline chat option so that the customers can actually drop in their queries if they are not met as and when, you know, at that point of time. Apart from that, we are providing all the services in the app itself so that the customer does not, you know, gets confused or does not have to go anywhere else. He can just get the related services in the app itself. Also, our app is B2C focused. So we basically are an app that has got more than 80% of their customers as salaried individuals. The rest are basically the firms, GST registered firms. We have corporates on board as well. Apart from that, of course, the reminders that we are providing, the instant tax updates, you know, we provide our customers with the latest news, the latest changes that keep on happening on a day-to-day basis, which actually helps our customers to stay updated. Also, we are providing our services at a very, very affordable cost. Our revenue model consists of 3 primary revenues. The first being the annual membership plans that the customer can take, and they can take these for their IT filing and other related services. Apart from that, we are also serving them with paid services, which are basically the recurring services that happens throughout the year, be it monthly return filing or a monthly tax payment services. And also we have in-app advertisements in the app. So our range basically is very affordable. We start from 499 to 12,000 depending upon the customer. Yeah, so we have multiple services. Any kind of service that the customer want, we have it in the app itself, be it payroll, be it bookkeeping, ROC, startup, incorporation kind of services, any kind of services there in the app. Talking about the marketing, yes, we have got 8.5 lakh downloads in the 1 year of our launch. This has been happened because of various multiple marketing tactics that we have got. We have used Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. We use multiple social media options to reach out to the new millennials as well as the new taxpayers that have actually helped us boost our number. So yeah, so we'll be reaching about 1 million downloads in the next 2 to 3 months. Talking about the paid membership, so currently we have got more than 200 paid members since we started our paid membership post February 2021, and this year we are expecting a paid membership of approximately 5,500. So, you know, there's a lot that will be happening in the app itself. There'll be a lot of automation. Softwares will be there, which will be integrated with the app so that the customer is able to do every filing or every kind of service on his own without depending on a professional help. We want our customers empowered so that, you know, they can use our app and is able to file the returns. They are able to do their tax services for which they were afraid of before, but now they won't be. Of course, there will be chatbots so that, you know, the repetitive and the very procedural kind of queries can be handled by the chatbot, and it will actually help us reduce our costs because currently it is being handled by the chartered accountants, of course. So softwares in place will actually help us automate every single process that we are having right now. Yeah, we got good market coverage as well in the last 1 year. We got the best fintech solution of the year award. And talking about the team, yes, Mr. Jammu Keswaran, Alicia and Rashi are basically the founders of the company. He comes with a total experience of more than 30 years, who has been into the taxation field since the past 30 years. Apart from that, Alicia and Rashi are also belonging to the tax area, and their experience and their foresightedness has actually helped the app to work out very well in the market, and to, you know, and their knowledge have actually helped to gain quite a good market coverage as well as a good market start basically. Apart from that, we are 15 in number, and we are planning to grow the number by 260 by the year end. We are majorly CAs, company secretaries, and cost accountants in place. talking about the funding, yes, we are actually in need of 20 CR in multiple branches, for which the majority will be going to product development as per the vision slide that I just talked about. The rest will be for the marketing, because we need to market a lot. We need to, because the market is very wide, it's very huge, and we need to reach out to more and more customers. And yeah, other will be for the salary and other expenses. Yeah. So thank you. That was the overall view of the product. You can start with the questions.
Thank you so much, Komal. So there are like few questions on the chat box from Niharika.
Sure.
So do you help in filing of taxes, or connect us to the people who can help us with filing taxes? And is
No,
your app,
yeah.
is your app available on App Store or Play Store?
So the app is available both on App Store as well as Play Store. And secondly, yes, we are doing everything on our own. We do not outsource this work. We have a team of 15, including chartered accountants, who are actually doing all these work on payroll.
That's it. There are like other question as well. Is this only for India, or do you have for other countries, since tax rule vary per country?
Yeah, so currently we are actually focusing on India and to, acquire a good market share. But yes, going ahead in the future, 2 to 3 years down the line, we'll actually be moving our app to overseas as well. Currently, we also deal with NRIs, of course. Any kind of NRI, we are actually happy to help.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Niharika. Thank you, Komal. Is there any question from the audience side, or we can like move up to final pitching slot?
How many customers you have right now? Sorry,
yes, so yeah. So basically, post February 2020, we have actually acquired more than 200 members.
200 paid members, or these are
yes, paid members. These are paid members.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other question from the audience side? All right. Thank you so much, Komal, for the brief presentation of the JJTax.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to final pitching slot from our company perspective, it's Mudra Book. So Subal, are you here?
Yes, hi.
Okay, go ahead, Subal. Over to you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Subal Jalan, founder Mudra Book, co-founder Mudra Book. Am I audible?
Yes, Subal, audible, and we can see the screen as well.
So, hi. This Mudra Book is basically we're trying to here we will be talking about the concept. We are very early stage, considering all 4 presentation we had seen earlier, and we will be discussing about our vision and the stage where we are right now, and what problem we are solving with this Mudra Book basically. So so before we start go to the problem and solution and all those things, so I'll just try to explain something, because there are certain this is not an accounting software, and here we will be solving the problem for MSME only, like not even MSME, it is like nano business, micro business, and ultimately the people who are not required to maintain books of accounts, also not to go under audit. So we have a separate law, governing these people, which is called composite GST available for these people, even presumptive income tax available in Income Tax Act. In banking, we have Mudra loan available, and accounting requirement is also exempted, and audit is also exempted. So that is a bird's eye view that what we will be talking into this presentation. So now we see the backbone of economy is basically micro and small businesses, and they struggle in lot of problems, like they face accounting problem, and if they opt for any particular software available in the market, say Tally, Busy, Easy, QuickBook, or any other software, it's a full-fledged accounting software, and these softwares are not required basically for micro enterprises, because they're not required to maintain even accounts as well. Similarly, for taxation also, so it's like a cumbersome exercise with a lot of laws and lot of definitions and lot of forms available. But there are simple forms available for micro enterprises, wherein they say that you are not required to maintain accounts. They can do some kind of a self-declaration. So if we segregate every single thing together and compile something for micro businesses, so we see that the law is there, which is helping these enterprises in the form of doing ease of business, promoting ease of businesses in the market. But there is not a single software in the market which is channelizing all this thing together. So here we are trying to provide a software, a kind of a automated tool wherein even an uneducated person can perform business and he can just focus on his business, because we are uncluttering everything here and trying to so the gap, the benchmark size is 1 crore annual turnover for the enterprise. So we can say that 96% of the Indian businesses fall under this category, whose turnover is 1 crore annual. So rest, every competition, every software is targeting that 4% of the market size, but nobody is targeting this particular market size. So problem is basically accounting, then digital payment collection, because these people are not even able to operate their net banking or something. Similarly, GST is a kind of, it's difficult for everybody to understand, but there is a composite GST scheme from Government of India, which says that you don't claim any input and straight away file based on your turnover. Similarly, in income tax also, there's a problem. In invoicing and billing, so there are a lot of MSME, they don't have a proper invoicing format. And similarly, if we see the loan portfolio, loan access, so a simple branch in any vicinity is catering all the loan, which is like housing loan, auto loan, as well as business loan. Similarly, the same branch is catering Mudra loan, but the Mudra loan people are not able to interact with the branch manager or reach the interaction point from where they can get disbursed. Although branch and bank have a target for priority sector funding, but the demand and supply match is missing on the ground. So this is all coming from the practical problems which we have seen on the ground and compiled here. So, so what we are providing to provide a solution in this app, we are providing like Udhar Vahi, like debtor management. Similarly, UPI based digital payment, composite GST, presumptive income tax, and without any soft hardware, we will be providing invoicing solution. It will be like mobile to mobile instant WhatsApp transfer invoices, so that there is no printing required, nothing is required. From one mobile to another mobile, we can instantly transfer the invoices. Similarly, based on the composite GST and presumptive income tax, automated Mudra loan we will be providing. So is my screen moving? Can you confirm this?
Yes, it's moving.
Yes. So now we have this, divided the entire product. We have made this into a product form and divided into 4 stages. So our first stage comes with the, we call it customer relationship management, CRM. For a micro business, the customer management is basically dues management, accounts receivable, payable, and instant invoicing, invoice management. Somebody may ask invoice, some customer may not ask invoice, some customer may ask for credit, some customer may not ask for credit. So it is not interconnected. It's like exclusive from each other. It's not an accounting software. So instant invoicing is a separate feature and dues management is a separate feature, because the customer base is not common for both the concept, for both the product basically. So similarly, compliance is also again a separate set of services, which is like composite GST and presumptive income tax. A customer may not be required to file even these composite and presumptive if his turnover is less than say 5-10 lakh rupees per annum, but these are available now. And similarly, based on these composite GST and presumptive income tax, automated Mudra loan shall be processed. And similarly, then fourth stage is something where we will be opening our network for business to business networking among MSME. Like for example, if I can explain you, there are diamond market in Surat or cloth market in Gujarat, or similarly we have a ceramics in Khurja. So these are our local markets, we can say, connected across India based on the vicinity. But if anybody willing to start a business, the sourcing is a big problem for everybody. So we'll try to create a network among all MSME wherein they can source the product also and they can source the finances also among each other. But that is the later stage that we can say after we achieve all these 3 stages, that network we will open once and after due diligence of each customer base in our. So it's like we are onboarding the customer with GST, income tax and Mudra loan. We are educating it, and then we are opening the network for those matured customer. Basically, it's not like for everybody's open network. Similarly, the product is defined. We are calling them CRM. We are calling Mudra Book, Mudra Invoice, Mudra GST, Mudra Tax. But this is not for big enterprise. It's only for, as explained, like nano businesses basically. And then Mudra Loan is basically itself is a product by Government of India. So the same name comes here also. And then peer network access. That's the last stage basically. Now, so we'll be using SaaS, cloud, and artificial intelligence all together, because we know that our customer base is, we can say the majority of them will have problem in understanding any kind of language. So it will be more of a sign language in the app, and we will be using everything backend, nothing in front end. So including GST and income tax, it's all based on the sales figure, automated processes. So he will simply need to give a go ahead to file the return. So that's kind of a thing we are. So we both are like the founders are chartered accountants, and we have more than 15 years of experience on the field. Similarly, we have a board of directors who are well connected with the industries. We have advisory board, we have tech partners. So right now, so we are trying to building the company and the product. Similarly, we have certain industry advisors, which are the pioneer in their field, and they are advising us. So if we say competition, so competition is Khatabook and OK Credit, but they are not our competition because our product line is totally different with them. So Khatabook has reached into online store, which is like digital store, and OK Credit is providing payroll, OK Staff payroll management. But our common accounts receivable management or Udhar Base is common base for all 3 platforms, wherein we are going ahead with the business management side, wherein we are providing instant invoicing, recurring invoicing, composite and presumptive taxation, and Neo Bank account we will be collaborating, and faceless Mudra loan. So here we are not, we have no vision to become an NBFC ourselves, but these platforms connection and these services will be compiled together on our platform. So, and then peer-to-peer business, we have business network and lending among peers. So these are this is a long-term vision basically. So these are the first stage of business where we are working. So Khatabook and OK Credit is a household name right now. Everybody is aware about them. Now, so we have also scheduled our pricing for the product for any GST and income tax related matter, even the cheapest possible fees for a chartered accountant or a lawyer for filing return would be somewhat around 25,000, 10,000 to 25,000 per annum. So which we will be reducing to 499 rupees per annum for automated compliances. So it's like a 98% cut for the users, and it will promote ease of doing business also. It's kind of a theme basically. And similarly, Mudra loan, we will be taking one-time processing fees of the file, which is automated faceless loan processing. So, so we have initiated our company in December 19, and then we have Khatabook is Mudra Book basic app is on Play Store, and full product we have targeted to launch by November, and then proceed with the market flow. So that's a target basically. So this particular thing has a impact us also with respect to whatever taxation or GST we are trying to collect from these sources, which is like composite and presumptive. These are the additional revenue to the government. So whatever single penny we channelize through those people who are not on the mainstream financing field, they will be able to, so whatever contribution they make, even 1% of the GST is an additional GST to the government. So even, so we target that based on our customer base, whatever we may have in the future time. So whatever revenue we generate, it's going to be benefit to the government also and to the economy also. Similarly, the taxation presumptive we are talking about. So we are onboarding people on our platform with issuing of PAN card and to providing presumptive taxation, so that they can go and reach a level of getting a Mudra loan from a banker, automated process, and then he can become a, so anybody who become an enterprise, who reach a turnover of 1 crore or 1.5 crore, he can, of course, he will be required to shift to other platform, which are Tally or any other leading accounting software. So this is something we're talking about, a vacuum in the market, because nobody is available in this field right now. And that's a kind of our brainchild based on the practicality on the ground. So that's the thing. And so we are very early stage right now, very early stage. And that's our thing. So that's it. Now I can take a questions.
Thank you, Subal. There are a few questions on chat box.
Okay.
From Niharika. Since this is for small business owner, some of them might be illiterate, or how do you cater to them?
So actually we are designing our product in such a way it will be based on a sign language. So we will try and educate them also, and we're trying our best level best. And based on video tutorials, which we will be posting on our app.
That's good, Subal. So another question is, what is the interest rate of the loan you give out?
So basically we are facilitating from the banks. So it can be any leading bank, like we have spoken to Indian Overseas Bank and some of the NBFCs also. NBFCs provide, so it's not even, it's not like we are ourselves an NBFC or we will be charging some. So Mudra loan is available at 8% or 9% in the market. So the customer, it will be 8 to 9% per annum. So it's going to be the same loan, which is the Mudra loan of the government of India, priority sector lending. So it's going to be an industry disruptor for all the NBFCs who's trying to, so for anybody who wants to come to the mainstream business, it's going to be a very easy for each customers.
That's good, Subal. Any other question from the audience side? Please unmute yourself or put in a chat box.
So Subal, just a quick question on your target segment. You're saying that it's typically targeted at small business up to a CR of turnover, is it?
Yes, absolutely. Annual turnover of 1 CR.
So essentially that means it will be something like a mom and pop store, right? Because 1 crore, you were saying it's a turnover, but if you look at what kind of margins they would earn, maybe anything where between 10 to 15%. So that kind of segment you are going to target, right?
Absolutely. 96% of the size. It can be a tailoring shop or even a dhaba or a restaurant, not restaurant, but per se dhaba. And you can say a pan shop and anything who want to come to the mainstream with the PAN and GST return and Mudra loan, basically. So those people who are left behind, basically.
So what kind of user base you have been able to drive traction in the last 6 months? How has been the response?
So right now, basically, we have a basic app available on Play Store, which is just like a Khata Book and OK Credit Udhar Bhai app. So it's a basic normal traders, basically, they are using. It's more than 100, 200 downloads we have achieved right now. And we are not doing any marketing because first we have to build a good product, because we are trying to not launch any product in haste, because it's going to be a GST and taxation mainly will be the key component. And so that's why we can say that so it's only so marketing we have not done anything as of it. It's a very early stage right now.
Okay.
Thanks, Chandra.
See the other last thing, sorry, one.
Yeah, sure.
From a customer segment that you're targeting, there will be a very diverse mix in terms of their understanding level, their maturity about all of these things. So like Niharika was saying, I'm actually curious to understand, do you have any human interface to help them through, to walk them through, handhold them, or is it completely digital and that's how they will have to kind of
see ultimately we initially at the time of issuing them PAN card and GST registration, so we will be collaborating with a partner on so we will be visiting them personally to get them onboarded. So that's something wherein we will be assisting them, and then video tutorial is there, and then chat box we will be so wherein voice chat is also there, and the call center of course will be helping them. So these kind of things, the support is required basically, and of course it will be there. But considering the so that is the target basically. We are trying to create something which even an illiterate can operate.
And I'm guessing that vernacular sort of services will become essential, right? In that case.
Yes, actually, through this app, they can come to the mainstream also, because this app is educating them, and this app is also filtering out the unnecessary thing which is not required and not applicable on them.
No, so Saval, what I'm saying is typically, I mean, we are biased towards either Hindi or English, but given the kind of segment you're targeting, I mean, having this content or information, education on different languages will just.
Yes. We're targeting all major languages in India, and then we have also planned the similar kind of app for global audience, wherein GST income tax we will withhold with instant invoicing and basic things we can launch, and we will name them as a micro book, something, not Mudra book. So that is also we are working on it.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Chandmay. Subal, there's a question on chat box from Pooja. How do you reach out to the target customer based on the assumption that most of your customers are not tech savvy?
So basically, we have created some marketing plan as well. So wherein some online activity will be routing through some mobile operator. Basically, we are trying to get hold with Airtel or Jio, so that we can reach all customers with respect to the presence of app. Similarly, with respect to non-tech savvy, we are trying to create some kind of in CSR initiative under Mudra Book, wherein we will be creating some, we will be helping them set up businesses in those villages in for one customer or two customers, so that we can get local media coverage and we can get more downloads and more people are curious of based on those CSR activities. So clubbing those things together, because that's a kind of a marketing strategy we need, because everybody is not on digital platform. So that's another challenge. So we are discussing that, and that's in the process basically.
That's good, Subal. Any other question from the audience side? Please unmute yourself or put in that chat box.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Subal. Thank you so much, everyone. Sumit, are you here?
Yes, Nitesh. Thank you so much, all the participants, and it was a quite an amazing session which we had today. And before we like part ways, I would actually, in fact, like to announce the session for next Friday, next Thursday, which we are having, and it is an interesting session around open banking which we are hosting, and we have an amazing set of speakers lined up for that. We have Nigel, who is the founder and CEO of Rails Bank, based out of Singapore. We have Sanjeev Kumar, who is the founder and CEO of Whiteside. Whiteside is one of the leading research organization in the fintech domain. And apart from that, we have another speaker joining in, that is Arpit Ratan, who is the co-founder at SignZ. And like the whole session is powered by Whiteside. And again, the whole theme around which what we'll be discussing is around how open banking is transforming the business ecosystem out here. What are the emerging digital business models which can be worked out? What is a global landscape? What opportunity rise for emerging markets like India and other places in the market? So with that being said, I think what we'll do is we'll send out an email for this session to all the attendees out here. And thank you so much for attending to this session. And it was really amazing. Thank you so much to all the startup founders who spent their evening joining us. And thank you also so much to all the attendees as well, spending your Friday evening listening to this amazing 5 startups presenting. Thanks a lot. Thank you.